So most people assume that enterprise IT systems fail just because, engineers decided to save a few bucks on alternative hardware.
Oh yeah, that is a massive misconception.
Right. But we are looking at Dr. Carlos Brito's recent Inside the Stack article over at Axiom today. And for you listening, our mission in this deep dive is to really demystify how engineers safely deploy this OEM alternative hardware in mission-critical environments.
Because in those high-stakes setups, they aren't optimizing for the lowest cost anyway.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. The core premise from Berto is that the hardware itself isn't the gamble. These systems crash because the operational risks and really the post-deployment ownership just weren't fully understood.
Yeah, they are optimizing for survivability. I mean, the danger isn't the silicon itself. The danger is what happens when accountability breaks down after the gear is, already humming in the racks.
But wait, if a transceiver or a memory module passes every bench test perfectly, how does it suddenly become a liability just because it's slotted into a server chassis? Like, electricity is electricity, isn't it?
You would think so, yeah. But the failure point is rarely a single, obviously defective part. What usually happens is that components are validated in total isolation.
Right, like sitting alone on a workbench.
Exactly. An engineer tests a module on a bench and it clears, but it works in isolation is vastly different from it behaves correctly inside the full system.
Ah, I see.
You completely miss the platform-level interactions, like how it handles shared power buses or specific PCIe timing constraints.
So it's kind of like a symphony orchestra.
Okay, how so?
Well, you can have this all-star violinist who plays their solo flawlessly in a practice room. Perfect pitch, perfect tempo.
Right.
But if they never actually rehearse with the entire orchestra, they're not going to hit the conductor's timing when the brass section kicks in.
That is a great way to put it.
Yeah, so if the violinist is our memory module, it isn't just about playing in key. It's about responding to the CPU's conductor interrupts at the exact right microseconds.
Spot on.
But if isolation is the enemy here, how do engineers properly audition the whole symphony before opening night?
Well, they rely on a very strict four-step validation framework. And what's fascinating here is that the first check, which is platform-level validation, it isn't just matching spec sheets.
Oh, really? What are they looking for then?
They are actively testing firmware, BIOS, and OS interoperability all together. They need to see how the alternative part behaves under real software loads.
To make sure it doesn't just completely crash the system.
Exactly, to ensure it doesn't trigger unexpected kernel panics when the operating system demands rapid state changes.
Okay, so that covers the software side. But production environments aren't pristine, climate-controlled labs.
No, they aren't. Which brings us to the second check, environmental and edge case testing. Engineers push way past ideal conditions to validate sustained thermal behavior and power fluctuations.
So they basically torture test it.
Basically, yeah. They need to know the physics of what happens during a brownout. Like, if a module hits its absolute thermal limit, does it throttle gracefully?
Or does it cascade and take down the adjacent storage controllers with it?
Precisely. And once it survives that, they move to the third check, which is compliance provenance.
Okay, wait. Why does paperwork matter to server uptime? Like, how does a lack of documentation actually bring a physical system down?
In regulated environments, it's all about defensibility. You need a traceable, audit-ready supply chain.
Oh, because of compliance laws.
Right. If you cannot prove the chain of custody with documentation, the system is legally assumed to be compromised. A vendor's verbal assurance just won't stop an audit violation.
That makes total sense.
And that ties directly into the fourth check, support ownership. Before going live, engineers establish a single point of accountability for escalations.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, though. Engineers don't just run these 4 checks and blindly swap out the entire data center, right?
No, absolutely not. They bound their risk.
Yeah, they typically start with replacement scenarios, meaning they drop the alternative part into a known baseline platform with the exact same workload to severely limit the variables.
Exactly. And they only tackle greenfield deployments after that controlled replacement succeeds.
Because greenfield is totally fresh.
Yeah, greenfield introduces entirely new platforms, new firmware combinations, and new workloads all simultaneously.
Without that familiar baseline to compare against.
Right, so the validation has to be exponentially broader to catch those systemic conflicts.
So what does this all mean for you? Well, OEM alternative hardware is not inherently risky. Unvalidated decisions are. Making a defensible choice really requires audit-ready proof and rigorous full system testing.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, Operational risk simply explodes when responsibility fragments.
Finger pointing.
Exactly. If something breaks and three different vendors are pointing fingers at each other, your network just stays down. Having clear, unified ownership is the ultimate safety net.
Which leaves us with a fascinating puzzle to mull over. As these highly regulated environments rapidly integrate massive, incredibly power-hungry AI workloads, how are these rigid validation frameworks going to survive?
That is the big question.
Right. When the extreme thermal and power edge cases of today become the everyday baseline of tomorrow, if our classical orchestra is suddenly asked to play heavy metal, is the conductor actually going to be ready?